Okay.
All right. What is that in the back? A TV?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
This the back of my TV. You look all spiffy with your blue shirt.
yeah, it's my uniform I wear for the podcast.
Really? Yeah.
Well, not really, but I've worn it a bunch of times.
Okay.
So, yeah, I didn't realize I was like yesterday. I forgot it was I knew you'd probably be watching the Patriots game, so I was like, we had a bunch of stuff going on, and I'm like, well, we'll just do it tomorrow if you have more time.
Well, as it turns out, I did watch it. I wasn't gonna, but I turned it on, and then it was back and forth. It wasn't a bad game.
Yeah. I mean, because we don't get the local, like we get the local games. It would be either the Bears, Packers, Vikings, and or Chiefs. So we
Who
don't
ended
get
up? Did the Chiefs win?
no,
No,
no way.
really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's a
they're
surprise.
well, I mean, they played Philly. I mean, it was a rematch of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the Chiefs.
So anyway, tomorrow's the anniversary of your mother,
Yeah, I mean,
16th. I don't know how many years. 20. What the hell? I don't know. 21 years. 20. 2001. 24 years. Holy shit.
I don't know.
That's insane.
Yeah,
It really is.
because I think I'm the age you were, or maybe a year younger when mom passed away. Because you were 50, were you 57 or 58?
I don't know. I was born in 44.
So yeah, 57.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
imagine.
I know. Yeah. So what I really want to ask you all a bunch of questions about is like when I wrote the book,
Hmm.
I just used that was my memory
Hmm.
of like growing up, and it's funny because I ended up talking to Mike after when we were on the cruise together last year about some of the stories, and he said, "Yeah, but do you remember this part of it?" And I didn't. I was like, "Yeah, I remembered part of it," but then hearing it from him, it was like, "Okay, that was a different different version of the story," you
Yeah,
know.
I know.
But
Well, two
so
people look at the same event and they both see it a different way, you
oh
know?
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. It's funny. Like I remember, speaking of that, when I was in high school, there was two things that happened. There was this English teacher I had who I think you and mom had to come in and meet with because I failed English one quarter in high school. And but she did this experiment. We didn't know it at the time. The whole class was in the room, the door was shut, and she was just talking. And then all of a sudden the door opened and this guy ran in to the classroom in the front of the room and he said a bunch of stuff and then he ran back out, right? And so everybody was like, what the hell what was that? And then like a couple minutes go by and he comes back in and he introduces himself and he talked about how he goes, okay, I want to ask, or actually maybe when he left, the teacher asked like write down what you saw and heard, right? So everybody in the class had to write down what they saw and heard about this guy barging in the room and what he said. And it
yeah,
was like you said, there was 25 kids, 25 people had different stories of what happened. It's just
yeah,
weird.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a, uh, there's a Japanese book written, a story written about that. And I think it was either the same guy or the guy that wrote the Seven Samurai, which is the Magnificent Seven book was copied from. But there's a robbery and a woman involved, and five different people saw five different things. The book was written in like 1400 or something, a long time ago. But some things never change, and
Yeah.
what really sucks is that, and I'm surprised is that this thing with Charlie Kirk is really bothering me something terrible because I started watching him like a year ago,
Yeah.
and you got to be shitting me. But the
Yeah.
the thing is that I was talking to this guy at work. I have this guy makes coffee every morning. This guy Ed. I go down and talk to him. And last week we were talking about the well, I don't know whether it started with Obama or whether it was before him or whatever, but what they're trying to do is to separate and pit one group of people against another. And, the blacks against whites, whatever divisiveness they can come up with, Democrat against Republican or whatever. And it's a system of divide and conquer. And I don't, it just seems like to me, anybody that's a Democrat is a socialist and not particularly likes this country at all. And it's not something new. It's been going on for quite a while. And what happens is you get a result of this guy getting shot is that people's when you split into two groups and one group hates the other, some whack job's going to go do something. It's just insane. And it's just I don't know. It's just a terrible situation. It really is. It pisses me off no end because I watched the guys' debates. I was just a couple of weeks ago. I was watching them debate the bunch of kids at Oxford in England, and he mopped the floor with them, using logic and stuff like that. But it's just I saw him get shot. I don't know. I was watching it or whether it was live or whatever, but I couldn't believe it. It was on air when he gets shot.
Yeah.
And the way the blood shot out and he went down, I was thinking, there's no way he's going to live with that. It just wasn't going to happen. And it's a shame that his two girls had to see it, his two daughters. But I don't know. It bothered me something terrible. It just can't
Yeah.
believe it. But anyway,
So I think what the other part about the book that when I talk about writing it was my experience was who was around, and mom's family was the only family around. Like your family wasn't around, right? Like so Kevin was in North Carolina, your brother and Danny was in Florida, and then
yeah.
even way before that, like, your parents, my grandparents, they were in Florida too. So what I want to ask about is like what was it like for you like when you were a kid growing up in Salem, I think? So
No,
like tell me,
Peabody.
yeah, you grew up in Peabody and
It's
okay.
South Peabody, Aberdeen Avenue.
Oh,
Uh,
that's right.
right after the war, um, when my father came back from Japan, we were living in Bakersfield. No, yeah, Bakersfield, California. My mother was there while he was in Japan, and I flew home with her, and we were living with her mother, the McNamees, and they opened a guy named Southwick built 200 homes for veterans. They were all the same cottage. It was what they call a Cape Cod cottage. Everyone was exactly the same. And Aberdeen Avenue, which was right at Saint Anne's Church, the corner there, on the corner of Aberdeen Avenue and Lynn Street, the church was a brown old wooden building that is now a parking lot, and they built the big brick building in 1955 across the street, St. Anne's Church. So everybody on our street in Aberdeen Avenue, every single person was a veteran, all the way down the street. They all bought the houses on the GI Bill. And the next street over, Dexter Street, my mother's brother, my uncle Bert, lived over there, Bert McNamee. And so it was a veterans neighborhood. The whole neighborhood was veterans. And my
So
father
wait, were
was
you born in Salem or where were you born though?
Salem.
Yeah. All right. So you were
My
born.
father was in my. I was born in 1944. My father was overseas. He didn't come home until after 1945. So I lived
So
with my.
he wasn't even there when you were born.
No,
So when did Papa go into well, it's now the Air Force, but like tell me like what I don't know is like where did Papa grow up? When did
he
our
grew up in
family?
Salem on North Street and had one brother, Uncle Dan,
Yeah.
and he graduated Salem High School in 1940, and he got a football scholarship to St. John's Prep. So he was at St. John's Prep from 1940 to 1942. The war broke out in December 1941. So in 1942, when he got out of St. John's Prep, because he had 2 years of college, because back then the prep school counted as a junior college, because he had the 2 years of college, he qualified to be a pilot. So he became a pilot in 1942. When he graduated from flight school down in Marfa, Texas, Marfa, Texas, my mother and her family went down and they got married in Marfa, Texas.
Oh,
And so that's where they got married. And then I don't know what, when he went overseas or whatever, but my mother and me lived with my grandmother, McNamee, for a couple of years. And he was, he flew fighter planes and then he flew B-17s. And there was a General Eichelberg that was on MacArthur's staff. So when they left the Philippines and went to occupy Japan, he moved into the hotel where MacArthur was staying because he was General Eichelberg's pilot, and that's where General Eichelberg was staying. So him and his co-pilot had to stay at that hotel, the Daiichi building or something like that. And they stayed in that hotel because they wanted him around where they needed to use the plane. You know, the plane was parked at Tokyo. And this is a good, you like this story. My father was on, they had to go from single engine training when you got your wings. Then you had like basic flying. Then he had to go to multi engine training. You know, with planes with more than one engine. It's a different license. It's a different pilot license for multi engine. So he was at this place out in California, Bakersfield, California. So what they did was is they were flying a plane called an AT-11, and it was a plane that had a double tail but two engines, and the front of it had a bombardier section. So they had when my father was getting hours learning to on the plane to go against his logbook, they were flying the bombardiers around and they were learning how to drop bombs. So there was this guy that was wanted to be a bombardier, and he couldn't hit the freaking ground from the plane. The guy was dog shit, right? So he wanted to be. So my father smuggled the best bombardier in the squadron on the plane before they got on it, and the best bombardier dropped the bombs right on the target. So this guy got his bombardier wings and it was a big deal. So later on, after the war's over, my father ran into someone and said, well, what happened to Joe Blow, the bombardier? He goes, oh, he went down over Germany in a B-17. They don't know, the plane went down. They think that's the end of him. So my father felt really bad that if he didn't fake the guy being a bombardier, he never would have been in that position to get killed, you know? So anyway, like about, had to be in the early 50s, 1950, 51. My father was working um, up at the airport. He was in the Air Force flying, and he come home one day, and a guy comes to the door, and it's the guy that he got through the thing. The guy that he got the his bombardier's wings for. So he was looking up my father to offer him a job. When the guy went through the nose of the B-17, he got all cut up with the plexiglass. So he got sent. He was in a German prison camp, and he went to California to like rehab. He had to go through surgery for a couple of year or two, and there was a woman, a candy striped nurse, taking care of him in the hospital. So they ended up getting married. He didn't know it, but she was the heiress to the Dole pineapple fortune. So the guy moved to Hawaii and he was the head of the Dole Corporation company. And he flew into Boston and offered my father a job in Hawaii to be work for the Dole. And he wouldn't go. He said, well, first of all, my mother wasn't going to leave her family, the McNamees, and say that wasn't going to happen. And so he didn't go. But there's, I could have been in Hawaii,
Yeah.
whatever, because I was already born. But
Whatever. I
so
just
my
paused.
grandfather O'Brien was Nicholas O'Brien, and Alice Hennessy was my grandmother. They were both born in Ireland, and my grandmother worked at Sylvania for like 30 years, and my grandfather O'Brien was a baker. He was a cake decorator. He used to do cakes with the
Yeah.
like make roses and fancy stuff. So all during the Depression, he had a job because people still got married and had wedding cakes. So he worked for Mohegan Bakery, which is on the corner of Essex Street, right across the street from the Witch House.
Oh
He
yeah.
worked there for 30 odd years. He died in 1957, I think, either 57 or 54. Um, he went into Salem Hospital for a relatively minor operation. And when they were doing it, they nicked his intestine without knowing it. And he got peritonitis and died because they botched it. And back in them days, there was no such things as lawyers and suing and all that shit. So it was just like, oh, well, shit happens,
Yeah.
tough shit. So he died from an operation. My grandmother, Alice O'Brien, Hennessy O'Brien, died in like 57, I think, from cancer. And she was living in Swampscott with my Uncle Dan. He took care of her at hospice. And they were great people. And me, and at least me, 100% preferred to go to the O'Brien grandparents instead of the McNamees. The grandfather McNamee was a bastard. He was a grumpy bastard. He was just a mean person. And so we used to go there every single Saturday night, had hot dogs and beans, boiled hot dogs, baked beans, and they had a cast iron stove in the kitchen that was probably 8 or 10 feet wide. It was a humongous thing, and it worked by kerosene. And there was a kerosene bottle upside down that dripped into the thing to make the flame,
Yeah.
but it burned your eyes. The kerosene was like, it was like, are you shitting me? It was like, oh, it was very, very bad smoke. It was, you'd be in there having a freaking stroke.
Yeah.
And so I used to go there, and sometimes I'd stay overnight on Saturday. And so my grandfather, O'Brien Nicholas, had a crystal radio, an old fashioned crystal radio. And he was always trying to listen to Notre Dame football games on Saturday.
Huh.
And he had a wire antenna that he used to put it up in the corner of the kitchen, and the wire went all the way around the kitchen as an antenna, and it was still, you could just barely hear it. It was crackly and lousy,
Yeah.
but that was his big deal. And then they had in the bathroom was very small, and it had a wooden bucket at the top with a chain hanging down that you pull the chain and it flushed the toilet. It was an old fashioned chain puller. And yeah, but he was a great guy. He whatever. And he used to have in their parlor, they had a Victrola that used to crank up with the speaker like the old Thomas Edison record player. Yeah, that's what we used to listen to records on that.
Yeah.
And they had so you went in a house, and they had a living room, a front room. Then you went into the kitchen, and on the other side was two bedrooms. One of them was closed, and it had a glass pane window, but it was, they always refer to those in Irish homes as a look-in room. Nobody ever could go in there, but you could look in.
Yeah.
They had a look in, and and their bedroom. But he used to tell me these bullshit stories and stuff. He was a funny guy. He used to sing the song Tora Lora Lora to me, trying to put me to sleep when I was little. And I remember, so my grandmother, Alice Hennessy, her brother, Francis Hennessy, my father's Uncle Frank, not my uncle. My father's Uncle Frank Hennessy was the superintendent of police in Boston when he was only one. He was the number one cop in Boston. He had been a cop in Danvers, and they picked him as a high potential guy. They sent him to the FBI Academy, and then he went to the Boston Police Department and rose up to the rank of superintendent. He was a 4-star general in the Boston Police, and so his best friend was Tip O'Neill, who became Speaker of the House. So that's how come when my father was in the Air Force from 42 to 62. So in 1962, when he was getting out, he had him appointed to be an air traffic controller automatically. He went from one to the other without breaking any service. So they had my father to be air traffic controller. What they did was there's a thing called ARTC, Air Route Traffic Control. So at the airport where the tower is in Logan, that only controls the traffic for 15-mile radius around the airport. When the plane leaves the 15-mile radius, it gets taken over by Air Route Traffic Control, ARTC. And they moved that from Boston in 1960, whatever one, up to Derry, New Hampshire. No, Derry, I think Manchester, New Hampshire, say. It's up there. So that took care of the Northeast region. So my mother had a bad heart. And so he had his choice. When he got out of air traffic control school, he had his choice of Logan, which turned out to be New Hampshire, O'Hare in Chicago, or Miami Air Traffic Control Center. So they picked Miami because of my mother's condition and not being in the cold. So that's how come they ended up in Miami. So this is all happening in 1962. So like in April or May of 62, maybe April. They go, well, you're gonna move. We're gonna move to Florida. You're gonna come with us. And I says, no. Whoa, wait a minute, time out. I said, and I want to graduate from Peabody High School, not Hollywood High School. I said, they only got like a month or two, 6 weeks left. So anyway, they left me standing on the corner downtown Peabody, and that was the end of that. I was on my own. So I went to live with Peter Pullio because we were in school together. And so I stayed with him, and then I went in the Marines. That was the end
Yeah,
of
so
that.
when did you decide, like what made you decide to go into the Marines? I
It's a
don't
funny
know.
story. Well, that's
Yeah.
funny. Bobby Grishesky, a friend of mine, Peter Pullio, and this other guy, Dougie Nelson, come up with this idea. We'll join the Marines on the buddy plan. So we go see the recruiter down in Salem at the Salem post office, Sergeant Olson. So he says, sign these papers here. Fill out all the information and give me these papers. So he's looking at all the information. They were all 17. I was 18. So he says, you guys got to get your parents' permission to sign on this paper to enlist. He says, get your parents to sign them, come back tomorrow. Okay, no big deal. So went to school in the morning, and across the street from the old Peabody High School was a donut shop where we used to hang out before school. So Bobby and Dougie come in, and Peter, and we got some bad news. Well, what's the bad news? My parents wouldn't sign for any of them. So I said, well, no problem. I'll go see Sergeant Olson and give him the bad news. So I go to Salem after school, and I say, hey, Sergeant Olson, I got some bad news for you. He goes, yeah, what's that? As well, Peter and Dougie and Bobby, their parents wouldn't sign the permission slips. He says, well, what's that got to do with you? I says, well, what do you mean? I was running the buddy plan, right? And he goes, "You're 18. You signed up. Your ass belongs to me."
Yeah.
I said, "No way." He goes, "Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
you government property." So it wasn't even my idea, and I ended up the only one going.
Yeah. But wait, but I mean, before that, this is what I always wondered, and I asked you before, like, okay, so back up a little bit, and you say, all right, so your grandfather was a baker, right?
Mhm.
And then Papa was a pilot, but
Mhm.
then so Papa's uncle Frank was a police officer. So like, how come like all those careers you could have went into maybe law enforcement, being a cop, or you could have went into the FAA, but then you just like why how did you end up in the Marines? I know that you guys signed up, but then you're like what made you think about joining the Marines during like pre-Vietnam or around when
Oh,
Vietnam
it's
was going?
1962. Okay, so when you graduated high school, you had two or three choices: go to college,
Yeah.
go to military, or get a job.
Yeah.
So military, I went to military because, like I said, it
Yeah.
wasn't my idea, but I ended up being the only jackass that went.
Yeah.
And so I was gone. I was 4 years, and then I got the best deal, 4 years. You
Yeah.
know, and so that was 62. I didn't get out till 66. So anyway, they didn't go. Peter didn't. Peter stayed back. As a matter of fact, he didn't even go in the army till 1964. He stayed back, and he didn't graduate. He had to go another year. And Bobby went to East Coast Aerotech, Krzyzewski, and he became he got his license, 2 year license, aircraft and power plant license as a mechanic. So he went in the army after that, and he was a crew chief on a helicopter. He went to Vietnam, and he got his ring finger shot off. Figured that out.
Yeah.
It was just a ricochet off of his gun, and it took his finger off. But he lives in Percy, Pennsylvania, in Dutch country, whatever it is. He lives on a farm, and he raises bees. He's got a bee
Oh
farm.
wow.
So I
Yeah.
haven't seen him in a long time.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
let me ask you this, because this is like the everybody that I know that had somebody that they were either a relative in Vietnam, they say, oh, well, no one ever talks about being in Vietnam. And I don't remember any stories ever about you being in Vietnam. Like none.
no,
I know. But
it never
that's just
came
like,
up. It never came up. It was not. I don't know. Nobody really cared. Nobody gave a shit, really.
yeah,
So, well, what happened is I was when I first got out. We get married. No, I didn't get married. I wasn't married yet, and I was it was 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning, and I went down to do the laundry at the laundromat down on next to Sam's bar. So what people would do is they'd put the laundry in the machine and go have a beer while the wash is either drying or washing. So I'm sitting there it's like 7:30 in the morning, having a beer with this guy, Ricky Presidio. So he just got out of the army. He was over in Germany. So he says, where you going after this? I goes, I don't know. What do you mean, where am I going? He says, you want to take a ride? I goes, where you going? He says, there's a place in Lynn, GE, they're hiring people. So I says, yeah, I'll go. I'll take a ride. So we go over there and make out an application. This guy, his name was Freddie Tucker. Big, he looked like he wore a bow tie, skinny Elmer Fudd looking guy. And so he says, when can you start? I said, excuse me? He goes, can you start this week? I said, well, I'm getting married. He goes, well, can you start next Monday? I said, yeah, I guess
yeah,
I can. And 56 years later, I'm still there.
yeah.
So turned out to
But
be a good move for me. And
so but what, so like how happened? So once you go into the Marines,
mm,
and Nan and Papa are now living in Florida, and your brothers are down there going to school or high school or finishing all that kind of stuff.
he was in high
Uh,
school, yeah.
yeah. So,
Kevin was in the Air Force.
oh, yeah, okay.
He didn't get out until, see, he was a a radar repair guy. Like he'd repair the radar unit off site, not the thing, but the electronics.
Yeah.
So he got a job for the FAA. He was working for the FAA as a repairman, and he was working in North Carolina. And the FAA owned a bunch of property that the site was on. And so what they did is when there was four towers around Raleigh Durham Airport, and the towers there's four towers that when a plane is flying towards the tower, this is GPS, but this is a backup says Plan B. When the plane is flying from like point A to point B, on the dashboard of the plane is two little like an odometer mileage thing that's clicking, and it's telling you how far you are from the beacon you just passed and how close you are to the one you're headed to. So you can look at those two numbers and look at your map and figure out exactly where you are on the map before GPS. So his he was responsible for the maintenance to keep that system
Yeah.
up and running. So it was before all satellite and shit. So when he stayed there, he married a girl from Hollywood. He went to high school with Jeannie, and he stayed in North Carolina.
Yeah. Ask more questions about what it was like when like having me, having Mike, having Matt, and also like what first I think there was definitely the when Mike went into the Marines, there was like a connection that you and him had about being in the Marines. Like I want to ask you about, like I said, what was your experience of being in the Marine Corps and then knowing like what Mike went through being in the Marine Corps?
Well, there's a funny thing about the Marine Corps, and you don't join the Marine Corps, you become one. Okay, so when you become a Marine, there's a thing called core values, which aren't Marine Corps values, but core 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 values that you embrace of truthfulness, honesty, do the right thing all the time. It's a code of being a good guy, do the right thing, be a solid guy, don't lie, don't rob, don't cheat, don't steal. And you either sign up for that. A lot of guys, 50% of people say that's a bunch of bullshit. I'm not. It, baloney. But I did. I bought into the integrity, honesty, something like that, and try to live my life that way. So that's what they gave me, and so I think it was in 1960. I think it was in the summer of '64. I left. I took leave. I spent uh, 10 days in Florida and 10 days in Peabody, and then I went to Camp Pendleton, and I went to Hawaii. Then from Hawaii, I went to Okinawa. Then from Okinawa to Vietnam, back to Okinawa, back to Vietnam, back to Okinawa, eventually home. So 1964, I left the United States and never came back for 2 years. I was overseas, and that was '64 to '66, a long time. And so and I got engaged to your mother in '63, bought her a diamond ring and paid for it for the next 3 years every month. They have these shyster freaking people in California that grab the young Marines and sell them a freaking bill of goods for a shit ring that's probably worth 10 cents. And so anyway, I was engaged, and I got out and we got married. And the best thing that ever happened to me. So no regrets.
Yeah. So then now, like I said, the perspective of me having Mike as an older brother, what was it like having Mike as a son? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, especially he was, the first boy, right? So he's your first son.
Yeah. Well, it was he was he was a work of he was a beauty. You know the crazy shit he did.
Yeah, I know.
He was just like, he used to go around like he'd take the crib and go around the room, banging the go over next to your crib and all that. You couldn't leave him alone for 2 seconds. He was a
Yeah,
maniac. And until he was like true, his hair stuck straight out
yeah,
like a freaking electric head,
yeah,
right? And he was just he was Mike then. He's still Mike now. He's
yeah.
he says like this is a typical Mike conversation. Hey, did you see the guy? The guy, yeah. About what? What guy? The guy about the thing. What thing? The guy. Like I was like, oh, forget it. But he's a good guy. He's just he's Mike, just Mike being Mike.
Yeah.
So
I know, but I can only imagine, like, because like you said, I know the stuff that he did, but like being his parent and like you and mom having to deal with him, especially like as he got older and he was able to like drive and how many accidents he got in and how many
yeah.
cars he totaled. And I mean, it couldn't have been
Well,
easy.
uh, we had a philosophy about that, your mother and I, and she believed that your kids are your kids, whether they're 5 or 55. Still the parents. No
Yeah.
matter what you do, you try to support you. You know, and you were away at college, so you missed a lot of his other stuff he did when you weren't around. But he never. I think that going in the Marines was a good thing for him. He had to get some structure in his life. Okay, he was scattered here, there, and everywhere, and it changed him quite a bit because he found out that he wasn't the toughest guy in the round, and I'm sure they beat the living piss out of him on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
Yeah.
So I remember we went down to Paris Island. You were with us,
Yeah.
and the guy jumped off the balcony and ran down the street. And
I remember before that, when we were driving onto the base, you were driving and we were driving down by the barracks and he was on guard duty and you said, "Uh-oh, that was like the day before graduation."
yeah,
And you said that probably can't be good that he had guard duty that morning.
yeah. Well, I know that after the graduation, we went to the PX and got 2 cases of Budweiser and put it in the drill instructor's pickup truck in the back.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he was he knew where that truck was and he knew that he promised them some beer or whatever.
Yeah.
He got out of there. But they ended up the Marine Corps screwed them. What happened is they were having a tug of war and he was the anchor man
Yeah.
and they pulled the rope and his right knee went the wrong way. Like it caved in. It broke like it didn't break, but it bent like backwards.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to drop him out of the platoon back to the beginning of basic. So they let him stay in the barracks on light duty during the training to keep him so he graduated with the platoon. So by not turning him in to get the knee properly taken care of, when it came time to file for a VA for something wrong, there was no record of it. And
Oh,
not only that, he was in the reserves. So he did 6 months in the reserves. And then in 1990, he got called up for active duty because of the Gulf War.
yeah.
And he was an armorer. He went to school at the Marine Corps don't have any schools. So they had an army school in Maryland. And that's where he met Amy. She was going to the University of uh,
George
George
Washington.
Washington University in Washington, D.C. So he met her down there. And so when he got activated for the reserves, they kept him for like 10 months. Then they sent him home because he was living here for a month, and they had him come back for 2 or 3 months. So he was in like 13 months, but you don't qualify for VA benefits until you do one continuous year. So they screwed him. He did more than a year, but they broke it, so he didn't get any benefits. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, see, you saw that side of it, but what I saw what the Marines did to him was made him more deadly than he was before he went in.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, there's so many stupid stories with him and Russ. Like when I was at school and he would come up and visit, and that one was, oh man, I'll never
Yeah, we
forget
had a
that
little
one. That,
state trooper barracks.
yeah,
Bail you guys out.
yeah, no, well, yeah, yeah. And Russ, he walked away, but Mike and I were in jail. But um, I just, he was, I don't know.
Well, you were in jail in Florida.
Yeah, Daytona. I was just telling Tracy that story. So last night we were watching Bosch season 7, right?
I'm only
And
up with the second season.
yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. But there was a part where they arrested this woman, and like they can hold you in the jail cell for like 48 hours, but then they'll move you to county prison or a prison, right? And so when we were in Daytona and me, Mike, and Dan got arrested, and they had us in this holding area, they said if you don't get bailed out by them in the morning, we're taking you to the actual prison. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I don't want to go spend a second in a prison. We were already in this like makeshift trailer that had literally like it was like a circus trailer. It had like
I thought
bars
it
all
was
the way
Fort
around.
Lauderdale. Wasn't Fort
No,
Lauderdale?
it was Daytona,
Oh, okay.
Daytona Beach. But they had us in this thing, and there was like all these bales of hay where everyone was just sitting on. And then there was so many crazy spring breaker kids, and they just all started going nuts inside this cage. And Mike was there with me and Dan, and whatever. And then they literally tear gassed this place. So Mike was like, okay, because he had tear gas training. He said he's just like put your shirt or whatever over your face, and we were like with our faces down into this hay bale. It didn't work. Didn't work.
Yeah.
It was like you breathed in and then that was it. You couldn't even breathe out. It was just
Yeah.
like until you passed out. But they were going to transfer us all. And then I had money that Russ knew where it was, like cash, because you had to cash. It was like $100. So I had $200 left. And I don't know if you remember this story, but I took like a cash advance on my Discover card.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, we only had $200. So he bailed out me and Mike.
Yeah.
And we had to leave Dan there by himself. Uh, but
Well, didn't
yeah,
didn't
Mike,
you guys didn't somebody miss some money and you had to get my father lent you the money or gave you the
yeah,
money?
yeah, we got robbed. The hotel, because we were so stupid. We had this hotel that we only had like, it was back when you had a key to the room. So
Yeah.
one person had the key. So what Mike did was he was like, he took like that no, like, do not disturb sign
Yeah.
and he made it so that he folded it into the door where it shut. So the door would be open. So anyone walk by, yeah, stupid. So we got robbed. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. I remember. And then we had to go. I don't know if Papa lent me the money or I can't remember. And then maybe you guys had to give him the money. I don't know.
Yeah, I had to pay him.
Uh, yeah, but the
Did I tell you
Framingham
the
State.
story about him wanting me to put my mother's urn in the cemetery?
Yeah, think so. Yeah, 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 yeah. You told me that one. Yeah,
Well, they had his urn. Why did I end up at GE? I told you this guy Ricky. I went
yeah,
over there. Didn't even think about. But I could have went to. Um, Now I think it was 1967, right? I'm working at GE, and I was making. No, it was after that. It was like 1968 or something, and I was a machinist, and I was making $110 a week, $11,000 a year, which back then was more than the average week's pay. I was making very good money at GE.
yeah,
So my father had an opportunity to go to the air traffic controller. He knew this guy in New Hampshire, uh, Dave Connors. who was the postmaster of Peabody, but his father, Hank Connors, and my father used to be carpool together. So I got offered a position to go to be an air traffic controller. Now I'm making 100 and something bucks a week with overtime, maybe 120, 150, which was 5 times as much people making in the leather factories. We were living pretty well. And so to get an idea, when we're living in Salem, we're paying $17 a week for rent.
Huh.
And we moved to Peabody to Stevens Street, and it went to $20 a week instead of 17. I had to put your mother on a ventilator. She almost had a freaking gasket for 20 bucks a week for my freaking mortgage of rent. But anyway, so the deal was you had to go to school in Lawton, Oklahoma, air traffic control school. And a GS, there's a GS rating for the pay scale for the government.
Yeah.
And say a controller was like a GS 12. My father was a GS 14 or something. He was a supervisor. But a GS 5, a basic GS 5 at the time, I would have had to take like a
Pay
more than
cut.
50% pay cut
Yeah.
for 6 months. I said, I can't afford, how can
Yeah.
I do that? That's
Yeah.
insane. And the same thing with being a cop. Uncle Frank said, you want to be a cop, just sign up. And the same thing. You had to go to the academy for, then you got shit money. And I said, I can't afford it. You
Yeah.
know, you're going to live the lifestyle, the money that you're making. So, we're living not bad. We got a car, we got, TV. We ain't doing too bad.
Yeah.
And to go and to have 2 kids and go from making a living to, poverty wage just it wasn't practical. It just didn't make any sense. Hindsight's great. You look back and say, I should have done that. But at the time, that wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah. So tell
So
me, walk me through the progression of your career at GE, starting out as what to ending at what.
I started off as a laborer, a helper on a machine press in the gear plant. There was a guy, Herbie, was the operator of this big, the sheet metal was like an inch thick, was 4 feet or 10 feet by 20 feet. And it was on these rollers that went into a press. Like there was
Yeah.
this thing that come down like a 50-ton press, and it was into a ball that was like, say, the size of a basketball. So what he would do is put a straight edge, like a 6-foot straight edge, across the flat steel. And if there was a bump, he'd mark it with an X. And me and him would roll it over to the underneath the thing, and he'd bring down the pressure until the dent went the other way. And then it kept putting the straight edge on it until it was straightened out. So I was a helper on the steel press. So, and I was working over in this building 66, and I was like a moving parts and shit. So they had a course, manufacturing studies. It was 3 days a week from 2 to 4, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I was on third shift. Oh, and then, well, the first year we were married, living in Salem, I used to go to work at Foodland from 7 to 1. I get work 11 to 7 at GE. Then I work from 7 to 1 o'clock in Salem as a food. That's where Peter and I worked before letting the service. So the manager there, Cliffy, gave me my job back. So we lived on Randall Street in Salem. I used to walk to Foodland and back every day. I go from one job to the other and over there. So they wanted me to stay at Foodland and quit your eat. I said, no way, I'm not going to do that. So eventually, so I was going to this manufacturing studies course 3 days. I'd get up and go to school at GE from 2 to 4. And when I got the manufacturing studies thing, from there, I took another course and I became a Magnaflux inspector. And I passed the test and got a stamp to do this Magnaflux inspection for cracks on metal parts. And so I was doing that. And then I put an upgrade in. They had a self nominating. There was the steward comes to me. This guy, Red Greer, comes to me and says, there's an opening for a milling machine operator. He said, put in an upgrade. He said, I'll make sure you get it. So I put it in an upgrade, and I was a milling machine operator on third shift. So uh, I came to the first shift. I was a milling machine operator on first shift. And the manager there, this guy, Ray Bouvier, said, I see you've been taking the manufacturing studies course. I said, yeah. He said, when you finish that, let me know. So I did. And he says, he offered me a job as a foreman. Because in 1969, we were out on strike for 5 months. Uh, went out on Halloween week, October. We didn't come back until March or February. So we were out of was out of work for all that time. But me and Brigley worked for a carpenter in Lynn, and this guy Ralph, we were driving by, and there was a sign help wanted, so we go in there. Ralph had bought three deckers.
Mm.
And he was rehabbing them, first, second, third floor, new ceilings, kitchens, everything, wallpaper, paint. So he was fixing one and renting it, then go to the next one, fix it up and rent it, and the next one, fix it up and rent it. So all that time lasted us most of the strike. So he wanted us to stay with him and not go back to GE when the strike was over. But he owned Malden Overhead Door Company, and it was a big company. He did this as like a hobby, but an investment, building these tenements. So he said his son was a crystal meth addict. His only relative was his son. And he said, you know what crystal meth does? Yours? I got no idea. He says, he can put his finger in the roof of his mouth and come out his nose. His whole inside of his thing is rotted away from crystal meth. That's all, boy. So he says, stay with me. I'll make it worth your while. And I said, I got to go back to GE. I got too much time invested, and benefits. Can't quit. So I went back to GE. So because I was on this manufacturing studies, I got offered 1970, I got offered a third shift foreman's job. And they gave me, in 1970, I had this slip of paper somewhere, $10,000 a year without overtime. So that was like a lot of money back then, a good money. So I got a foreman's job on third shift, and I went to second shift, and then eventually the first shift. And each one, say, the third shift foreman was like a level 10, the second was 11, and first shift was 12. So I was a foreman on days, and Bob Schulenberg was the superintendent of all the turbine. So he says, I want you to go in this progression thing for 2 months at a job. So I went from the first shift foreman to 2 months in ordering material, then 2 months in quality, and then 2 months in maintenance, machine repair.
Mhm.
And so then when I got done, I took over as the manager of the building. So it was a self-contained building. I had the planners. I had 300 and something people, and I had all of the things I needed to do my job. I ordered my own material, had my own maintenance, had my own tool sharpening, everything. So it was a self-contained thing. So I was the manager of that building. And then in 1986, Turbine left Lynn and moved. It was Turbine, G at the time was 26,000 people. And after Turbine left in 1986, it was down to less than 12,000. So they gutted the place out. So when I in 1986, Kevin Brown up the street was a foreman for me, and I knew that Turbine was moving. Out, and I was going to end up looking for a job. So I got him a job. Dick Leslie was a friend of mine as a head of HR. So I had Dick Leslie hired Kevin as an HR guy. So when it come time to get laid off, Gary Quinlan was the foreman over in Everett, who worked for me as a foreman in Turbine. So Kevin set it up so that I got hired as a manager over in Everett. So in 1986, I went to Everett until in the summer of 88. I moved back into building 66 that I left in the 2 years before that was empty. And we moved Everett into that building. So I was in that building for 18 years. 2 years in Everett, then back again for 18 more years in the same building. So I sort of knew my way around the building after being there for all that time. So I was a I was a manager, as a shop manager in T700. So Tim Noonan comes over to see me and he says he was the vice president of aircraft. So he says, "Can you do me a favor?" And I'm like, "Favor?" When the vice president says he needs a favor, you'd be an idiot to say no. So I said, "Yeah, whatever you want, Tim." So he says, "I got all these young kids coming off these programs that need a job, and the only job that's a better job in Lynn is your job." He says, "And I can't take you off your job because you're doing your job." He said, "But if you do me a favor and ask off the job, it'll give me a space to put one of these young kids." I said, "Okay, yeah, no problem." So he made me the head of materials and all of that shit, like production control and planning. And then, so I did that. And then I became the PFL for Lynn, the plant fulfillment leader for the whole plant. And then when Frank took over Lynn, Frank Coccoluto, I became his number two. Like he was the officer, I was the executive officer. He was number one in the plant, I was number two in the plant. So I worked for him. And then the unit managers in each of these 6 or 7 units would work for me. And I used to run them, and Frank ran the whole plant, but I just had control over the manufacturing. So I was I was the only guy in Lynn history that got hired as a subsection level without a college degree. That was it was a requirement to have a college degree to get to that level. And Joe Hermans was the manager of Everett. He told the head of HR, kiss his ass. He says, I'll make people whatever I want to make them. You don't tell me what to do."
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. So
But
I
didn't
was
you, but
very fortunate.
didn't you, I remember at one point didn't you take classes though? Like
Yeah,
at night or something, like for,
yeah,
in college?
yeah. I was going to Eastern Nazarene College at the Ferncroft. So I had to be with Tim Noonan, who's the head of Lynn. So I says, "Hey, Timmy, I got to leave a little while." He says, what do you mean?" He says, "I got to go to school. I got class tonight." Right. He goes, "Class?" I goes, "Yeah." He goes, "What, night school?" I goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, too bad you're leaving GE." I said, what do you mean? Too bad I'm leaving GE. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
He goes, why are you going to school? I said, "To get a better job." He goes, "Who told you that?" I said, "I don't know. It's like popular belief. I don't know. That's what I
Yeah.
always heard." He said, "Well, let me straighten you out on that deal." He goes, "Here's the way it works." He said, "GE hiring a new manager, you got to have an engineering degree. And the engineering degree just can't be Joe Shit the ragman. It's got to be from either Rensselaer or WPI. And not only that, you got to be in the top 5% of your class." He said, "So," he said, "what makes you think that some Joe Shit the ragman college is going to get you a job when those are the requirements?"
Yeah.
I said, "No, that's what I heard." He says, "You'll do okay where you're at." He says, "Don't you worry about that. You don't need the college degree." He says, "You just do what I ask you to do. Don't you
Yeah.
worry about that bullshit." So that was the end of my going to college. That was the last day I went. So
So I know I'm going to back up because I remember you said 1986 a couple times, and that's when I was a senior. And it's funny, like when Mike, me, Tracy, and Amy went on the cruise last January, it was the most time I got to spend with Mike since we were like little. Like, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like even in high school, it wasn't like we spent that much
yeah.
time together. But anyway, we were telling stories. And I don't, you guys, you probably remember because you and mom used to go to all the football games, right? But I remember there was a hurricane. We were supposed to play Friday night, Everett, and there was a hurricane.
Is
And
it
so
Peabody
they
now or Framingham? Peabody.
Peabody. Yep,
Okay.
Peabody High. So there was a hurricane. I don't know, it was a Gloria. I forget which one it was, but they moved the game from Friday night to Saturday. Um, no, it wasn't even the Everett. It was the Everett game. Yeah, it was the Everett game. What something happened where the game got moved. But anyway, I don't know if you remember this, but I'm sure you guys were there. But after the game ended, so Everett beat us, and like I think we were 2-0 or 3-0, and Everett beat us, which was bad. But after the game, there was a fight. Like Huey started a fight
Oh,
with
he
one
didn't
of
see.
the
Yeah, yeah, I remember.
yeah.
I
So there
remember
was this
that
big fight.
clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big fight happens, and then the coaches were like, they wanted all of us to get on the bus. So we're like fighting, but we are like getting pulled on and onto the bus. But down the street, somebody got shot. Someone from Everett shot somebody, and the person was this kid Billy Gullah, and he played for St. John's Prep, so he was just there watching the game. But I didn't know this until we were talking with Mike and Amy. Amy was with him, and she was the one that took him to the hospital.
Oh,
And
really? Yeah.
yeah, and I was
Oh,
like, oh man, I didn't know that. So she's like, that was kind of interesting to find out after what 30, how many years is that? 86
yeah.
till
Well,
today.
the the bus for Peabody was there was like you had to go by the clubhouse or the locker room up a hill to get on the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And cheerleaders were Everett cheerleader was there, and she spit at Huey, Brian,
Yeah.
spit
Yeah.
in his face. So
Yeah.
as a reflex action, he had his hand on the face guard and
Yeah,
he
and he hit
whacked
her.
her in the face with the helmet.
Yeah.
That was it. World War III started right there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't on purpose. I mean, it was just a reflex. He just got, just like she spit at him, he just went whack. And
Yeah.
that was a full blown riot after that.
Yeah. I
That's,
got another question for you though about a story I just remembered recently. Remember when we were in high school, maybe even junior high, we used to go ice skating every Friday night was a big deal. We'd go up to the ice skating rink and go public skating Friday nights. And I think you were gonna come pick us up one night, because we'd get dropped off, we'd skate for like an hour and a half or whatever, and either you or mom would come pick us up. Well, Mike ends up getting in a fight with some kid, and then the fight, like verbal fight first, and then it goes outside. And then we're outside, and I was scared. I was like, what's gonna happen? There was all these kids, and it was just me and Mike. And so he starts fighting this kid, and you showed up, and I don't remember what happened, but all I do remember, I think, is that you just let the fight happen. I think, do you remember that? It was this kid.
well, I remembered. I told him to break it up. I stopped it.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. I don't remember what happened.
I stopped it, and then I think that I don't know what happened after that, but I don't know if it continued after I left or whatever. But anyway, it was. I remember pulling up, and Mike was fighting this kid, and I fucking told him, knock it off, stop the fight. Mike was pissed because he was beating the shit out of the kid.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh yeah. How about remember Mike had to go? Mrs. Lawler, the singing teacher
uh,
at the high school, the big fat lady. So she wanted to see me because Mike. She wanted to see me about Mike, his behavior. He did something bad. So I go up there, and so she was a little bit portly, a little bit big. So it says, "What happened? What's the problem?" She says, "He called me fatso, or fat is something being fat, a fat lady or something." I says, "Oh." So I said, "Well, that isn't too good." So Mike says, "Tell him what you said to me." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "She called me stupid, so I called her fat." So I says, "You called him stupid?" She goes, I said, "Meeting's over. See you later. We're
yeah.
out of here."
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Big, uh, freaking Mike. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, they had that, what is it, Camaro, the
Yeah.
Z28 Camaro. He whacked
Yeah.
that on the pole.
Oh, yeah. Multiple times. It was like, I remember the first time was when him and Charlie, like they were supposed to be going to football practice. It was like at the morning of the game, I think, even. And yeah, it was raining out, and he hit the pole, like the pole was like, but hit the car like between the front fender and the wheel. Like that's where
Yeah.
he hit, like because he was spinning out and he hit the car or whatever. And that was like, I think we obviously repaired it, or like I don't even remember what happened, but it got fixed.
Yeah,
But the second time, I don't know if you remember this story, but the Camaro was basically, it should have been just a two-seater. Like the back seat was small,
yeah,
and there was probably seven of us in the car, and maybe there was some drinking involved. But Mike was driving like up in West Peabody, and there was like a intersection where he went through, and then Huey's brother hit us, and he hit us like T-boned us. Um, and he was going pretty fast. And that was like the second time I think he totaled it. But I don't even remember if he even fixed it after that one, because that one was pretty bad. And I'm surprised
what
nobody got
happened?
killed.
There was a big deal after that because what happened is it was a 70 something, 69, 70 Camaro.
Yeah,
Had a new paint job that I had it painted with the white stripe and that deal.
yeah,
Big chrome tires, wheels on it, like $1 million chromes.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then a special radio
yeah,
uh, put in and all kind of shit, right? So uh, they took after it was a minor accident, but the tow truck took it to a body shop in Salem.
yeah. I remember that.
And the body shop, the impound lot was locked. So the guy left it on Bridge Street overnight. So the next morning, there's no tires, no rims, no steering wheel, no
Oh
seats,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
nothing. So at the time, I had electric insurance, Norman Electric Insurance, GE. So they're going to give me 69 Chevy, $600 for the car. And I said, that's bullshit, right?
Yeah,
So I told them what the car was worth, and I had receipts for most of it. So I got this guy, George O'Brien, was a lawyer in GE. He was a HR guy, worked for Dick Leslie, but he was also a lawyer. So I had him call up Electric Insurance and told them we're going to sue him and all this other shit. And anyway, they said send in the receipts and all of that. So they ended up paying me what it cost to replace everything. I got a check for like 7 grand, which
yeah,
which was that just basically covered what the damage they did. So I don't know if the car went to somewhere or when it went after that, but the no one Dick Leslie was very he was a good friend of mine, and he's the one that knew Larry Toole, the guy that hired you into GE.
yeah, yeah. I
Because
remember. I remember. I remember going down there.
I was talking to Leslie. I was over 74 talking to him, and I said that you were graduating college. And did he know anybody in GE corporate HR? He goes, wait, you know the guy, Larry Toole. I goes, what do you mean? Because you remember him. We used to work with him back 20
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah,
So I said, well, I don't know so I called him up. He said, call him up. Here's his number. So I call him up. I said, Larry, remember? Oh, sure, I remember you. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. So I told him you were graduating. He says, oh, I got to have him go to Connecticut on Monday. So I was just like,
yeah.
bam.
But that wasn't as no. I was or no. I was working. Remember, I worked at Sears in
Yeah,
Salem, the credit card place, collecting credit card payments first,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that was about a year and a half, almost 2 years, I'd say. And then mom's friend, maybe a friend of Kathy Walzak or mom's, I think it was mom's. They went to high school with that woman. She had like a temp agency.
yeah.
Remember up in Route One and in like Topsfield? What
I
was her
thought,
name?
didn't you work at that car place with
Yeah,
Robin?
that's what I'm saying. She ended up getting me that job.
Yeah, okay.
But what was that lady's name? Do you remember?
No,
Anyway, it was some woman that mom knew had this temp agency, and she said, "Oh, there's an opening for this collector job at this finance company in Saugus." And
yeah,
that's when I started working at that First City finance company with Tony Vizzoni and all that stuff. Oh my
yeah,
God. So it was like almost like probably 3 years of work before I got to go down to Connecticut.
yeah. Well, that was because of Larry Toole and Dick Leslie.
Yeah.
Mixed that up.
Yeah, I just remember going down there interviewing, and then I still have my offer letter from that job in 1995. Yeah, so it was like yeah, almost 3 years after I graduated. It was 25,000 a year as a collector.
Well, I don't know what that was for money back then. It might not have been too bad.
Yeah,
But
it wasn't terrible, but I think it was I was making more at the finance company before I left, but it was definitely worth.
I remember when you bought your first car, the Volkswagen,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I never saw a car with red lights on the inside, the dashboard.
Yeah, I remember. Well, that was my first new car, but the first car I got was that black Jetta. Well, not my first car, because remember that first car I had was it was like a Honda Civic hatchback that was like primer gray. Do you remember that one? The Honda
Yeah,
with the
yeah, yeah,
hatchback. And
yeah.
I think I paid $600 for it from some kid in West Peabody.
No, I
But
don't
then, yeah,
remember.
I had the black Jetta, which was used. Um, and then I think I blew the clutch on that. And then I think I traded it in for something I can't remember.
Yeah, Mike was living here with Julie.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm
Uh,
thinking that was yeah, so he was where was he working? For Frank?
yeah, the muffler place in Revere.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's another thing. Think about how many jobs he messed up because he got hurt or something. Remember he got hurt? Remember like something like a piece of metal went flying through his thumb or something?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he had to have that was it for that job because he couldn't work. And then do you remember when he started working for Huey and he was messing around and
Yeah,
he
he fell
broke
off a shelf or something, broke
yeah,
his,
yeah. He fell
broke
off like
something.
two file cabinets and broke like his arm, his ankle maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That was the end of that job.
Yeah. Oh.
Crazy
But I
shit.
do you remember how or why or any of it, but when we got the jobs at the Proctor House, do you remember that?
No,
You don't remember when me and Mike were dishwashers with Burnsy? Me and Mike Burns, we worked at the Proctor House.
I really don't know.
Really? Oh man. I remember riding, it was only what, like half a mile from the house, maybe?
Yeah.
Riding a bike up Olson Road, going back through the what was it?
Down there,
Felton? No.
Burnsy's house in the
Yeah.
back there.
Yeah. And then it was right there.
Yeah.
That, oh my God, that job was terrible. That was probably my worst. I hated that job so much. I remember there was like a Saturday I was supposed to work and I went in and they just treated you. I was the dishwasher, so they treated you like shit. The cooks hated you. The waitresses were kind of nice, but it was hard work because you had like to do all the dishes, all the silverware, but then all the pots and pans was like on the other
Yeah.
side of the. It was a disaster. So I remember I was just so pissed. We were making like $2 or something an hour. It was ridiculous. But I quit. I walked off and I went to the mall because I knew if I went home I was going to get in trouble. So I remember like I had to call from a payphone to talk to mom to see when it was okay to come home. Like what, like if I was okay to come back to the house. Ugh.
Well, there was, you guys all went through the Penta School of Druggery.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That was a long time, man. I mean, I look back like two funny stories. That one I don't know if I told this one in the book, but I know you probably remember. Guy who he would get like they had a wood burning stove in their house to heat
Yeah.
it. And so they needed wood. So they would order, I mean, he would get, remember how many cords of wood, whatever, like 5 cords of wood. And me and Mike Penta would split the wood and stack it. And he would pay us. This is before we did the rug stuff. But one time, we were out there splitting the wood and we had an axe and then we had a sledgehammer and an awl, right? In case the axe got stuck or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember the axe got stuck, so Mike Penta was gonna hold the awl, and Mike O'Brien had the sledgehammer. And I mean, he took it like two-handed like this. And I mean, it wasn't even close. Like if this was his hand, he hit him in the arm, like right here, and just shattered his arm in half. And I just remember the scream, hearing that scream. But what the hell
He died,
happened?
I think, Penta. He died.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He passed away like it was a while back, maybe 2 or
Yeah.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, But what was like, I mean, if you were a guy and your son just got his arm broken by the neighbor kid, like what was that conversation like?
I don't remember anything about it. Like,
Really?
yeah, no,
It was no big deal.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
say anything.
Huh.
Kathy was, she's, oh man, I saw her.
Where do they live?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I really don't know. She moved in with Kelly for a while, and Kelly moved in with her, wanted away. And then,
It, I got one other quick story to ask you about. We were in, I think we were in junior high, and I was playing baseball on the Orioles, which was like the worst experience of my life. I hated that team. I hated everything about the coach, everything. It was terrible. But Mike Scotty, you remember Mike Scotty?
yeah,
He was on my team. So you knew him because we would drive either to practice or get picked up or whatever. And do you remember one time he was getting chased by some kids or something like that? And you were driving by and you picked him up and brought him home. Do you remember that?
no,
Yeah. He said he was getting chased by these kids like after school or something like that. And
I
he
remember
was,
something vaguely. I don't remember the whole story. Yeah,
yeah, I didn't know if you remembered that. Yeah, I think you picked him up and brought him home because he was like running from these kids that were going to
I
beat him
told
up.
the kids to leave him alone. I took him home. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
his father, Mike Scott, the coach, Scott.
No, that was another that was no, that was actually a fun team to play on. That was the Indians. You remember that team when
Yeah,
me and Mike
yeah,
were on the Indians?
yeah,
Yeah, that was Mr. Scott, but it was Phil Sheridan too. Phil was the coach
yeah.
before Mr. Scott.
I just saw him about a month ago, first time in like 20 years. I was backing out of the Lomart parking space there, and he was walking in, but he walked in front of me and went and so I'm looking at him, and he still had the white hair
Really?
sticking out like Harpo marks like this. I said, that's Scott. I said, what the hell is his name? Mr. Scott. I don't even know
Yeah.
his first name.
Yeah.
So it was him. He's still around.
Yeah, that was that baseball team was fun. But I just remember and then remember we played youth football for Mr. Roach up behind the Lomart. Remember we have to
Oh
that
yeah,
there was
yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah,
that park behind there.
yeah. Well, crazy shit. But
Yeah.
this thing with Charlie Kirk bothered me unbelievable. It just got me all bummed out. But now tomorrow's the anniversary of your mother.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a ride over the cemetery. Oh, well, I was gonna go today, but I'll go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
let me ask you about that because I remember like it was, I was living in Newton and but I just remember like years before, remember mom always had something wrong with her shoulder. She was
Yeah.
going to rehab and doing all this other stuff. So like what happened? Like how in the world did
She
all of
was
this
going to
like
this doctor that said she had frozen shoulder.
I remember that.
So they gave her a shot in the shoulder, and so they had her going to rehab, and they were doing it.
Yep.
So it was, I forget when it was. She died in September. The end of July, I went to some other doctor, get rid of Fisher, went to some other doctor. Fisher was her doctor because he was the diabetic doctor.
Yeah.
So anyway, they did a test and they found out she had cancer. I think it was small cell cancer, lung cancer.
Yeah.
So that was in the end of July. And so what happened is it was so aggressive that from the first time that she had cancer, she only lasted like 6 weeks. It was gone, just like that. And so after about a year after she died, I was talking to this other guy, and he said that the first sign of lung cancer in a woman is a frozen shoulder.
Yeah.
I goes, you got to be shitting me, right?
Yeah.
Are you kidding? And I looked it up, and it's true. The shoulder pain is the first sign of lung cancer in women. So I was talking to the oncologist, the first meeting I had with the oncologist about what are they going to do, chemotherapy, blah blah blah, or whatever,
Yeah.
you know. So he says something about uh, smoking. So he said, if you ever smoked in your life or secondhand smoke, you can get a carcinogenic, whatever, right? Cell. So he said that a cell can be in the secondhand smoke, whatever. All it takes is one cell to migrate, and then it can go in anywhere in your body. And he said that cancer cell can come from your ear down to your ass or out your finger, or it can go anywhere. So he said it happened to go to her lung, and he was saying. So I said, "Well, why? What's the big deal about smoking when they tell you that they want you to quit smoking, and you're telling me if you ever even smoked one cigarette, you're like you could get cancer?" He says the reason a doctor tells you they want you to quit smoking got nothing to do with cancer. It has to do with your heart. And he says what happens is when you're a smoker, he said that you're burning 1,200 calories to 1,400 calories a day to process oxygen through your lungs. He said that's why when people quit smoking, they gain weight. And they always say, oh, that's because they eat different or they like food better. He said it has to do with your metabolism. And he said that once you smoked, the reason why doctors don't want you to do that is that the 1,200 calories that you're burning to process oxygen is putting a strain on your heart. So he says they're looking at heart disease, got nothing to do with cancer.
Yeah.
He said, so the whole thing revolves around heart disease. It's got nothing to do with cancer. It never was meant to be cancer. I said, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's crazy because there was all this new, not new, but like the couple of podcasts I listen to are doctors, and they say that if you look at the lung cancer, people that get lung cancer, some of them never even smoked, and it has
right,
nothing to do with smoking.
right.
Like the people that smoke, it's like a point, 5% chance
Yeah.
or whatever of getting it, which is like
Well,
the same effect.
you can get one of these, what they call small cell carcinoma or something. You can get one of them and never have smoked in your life,
Yeah,
and it's crazy. It really is.
yeah, yeah. I do.
Anyway,
And it's also the week of September 11th, and I remember. So I was like at living in Newton, and um, I was working still, but I was driving back and forth, and then I just remember like going to the house and coming home, and then going back and coming home, and then when Mom came home, it was like that week before September 11th. It was probably like say Friday, the Friday before that weekend,
yeah,
and Mom came home. And then I remember we were there on Tuesday morning just because I was like I'm not going to go to work. I'm just going to come to the house because she was
mhm,
home for hospice. And I just remember it was me. I think Mike was there, or he was coming over. Matt was there. The TV was on in the living room,
yeah,
and Mom was outside. And so all that September 11th shit started happening, and we were like, well, we didn't even tell Mom. Remember, like
yeah.
we
I
were
know.
just like, we'll just take her back from outside and bring her into her room. And we just
Well, she saw
didn't.
it on the TV.
Yeah, but I don't think we told her what
No,
happened. It
no.
was like
She says
initially,
she said that they catch them guys.
yeah,
I said, what guys? She goes, the guys that smashed that building. I said, oh yeah, they got them.
yeah,
Oh, good. She says she had no idea.
yeah. But you remember in the beginning, they thought it was just like a little small plane that hit the first tower because they didn't have all the
Yeah,
footage
well,
or
they were
anything yet.
saying that, they said, well, it's
Helicopters and
1945, a B-25 flew into the Empire State Building. And they say, well, it's not the first time a plane hit a building, right?
yeah,
And then the
yeah,
next thing you know, bam, the other one comes in, and then the
yeah.
next thing you know, they're falling down and all kind of shit. So, but yeah, that was a tough week, and so that was all over the TV, and everybody's freaking out about that. And then priest for the last rites, right? So I called the St. John's Rectory and talked. I said, my wife's home for hospice and she wants to see a priest for the last rites. Yeah, 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 yeah. So called the next day. Finally, the guy shows up like on Friday morning. And I left him. He came in here. I left. She was in here with her alone. And so I'm waiting outside on the porch and he comes out. And I says, normally this is the part where I give you what they call a stipend, money. I called there time and time again, and you never came here. I said, and I said, don't tell me that you're busy. Save your stupid stories, okay? I said, all I know is when I needed you, you wouldn't come here. I said, so just get off my porch and get in your car and get the hell out of here and consider yourself very fortunate to be walking away. So that was that one. And so then when I went to CVS to get morphine, the guy, Morris Nagy, I grabbed him. I was going to kill him, the pharmacist. Mike grabbed me and got him away from him and all that other shit, right? So I was in the kitchen with the hospice nurse. So she says, what pharmacy do you go to? I said, CVS up on Wall Street. So she goes, I was there when she called. She called the pharmacy and said, I'm from hospice. Here's my number, my charge account number. And she says, I want to order morphine. She gave them numbers and all that, whatever. And hospice is paying for it, right? So I go there, and I was with Mike. So I said, I'm here to pick up the prescription, and it's for morphine, right? So he goes, that'll be $10. And I said, no, it ain't. I said, I was there when the woman called you. He goes, no, it's $10. I said, listen, I heard her give you the account number and said that hospice is paying for this. Well, I don't know who you talked to, but it wasn't me. I said, oh, all right. So I said, you no good bastard, right? So I grabbed him and I was going to pull him over the counter. And so anyway, after maybe the following week, I called CVS and I said, listen, I want to talk to you about this guy, Nagy, Morris Nagy. I said, somebody's coming in there to get morphine. So let's just assume that for the sake of argument, that this person probably isn't at their best mental state. Okay, there's something going on where this guy's getting morphine, and for this guy to pull that shit, so he says, we'll investigate and we'll call you back. So they did call me back the next day, and they said, "What do you want? What do you want us to do to him? Do you want him terminated?" I said, "Not really." I said, "I would like to have him get some sensitivity training." That this don't happen again. If some poor lady comes in and doesn't have $10, or I said, come on, that's bullshit. So they said, all right, we're going to send him to sensitivity training and make sure that he's aware of you can't be like that, and blah 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 blah. So a couple of years later, I go to pick up a prescription. Who's there but Morris Nagy?
Did he remember you?
Mine, goes, yeah. He goes, he had no idea it was me. He didn't remember anything about it. I was ready for a little talking, but he just right over it, just never
Yeah.
knew. So
I
I'll tell
do
you
you,
one quick story before.
yeah.
When I was talking the last time I talked to your mother, she goes, she says, so what's going to happen to me? I'm scared. I said, well, don't be scared. I says, you gotta, you gotta close your eyes. And then when you wake up, you're gonna see your mother and father. And they're gonna say, yeah, where you been? Been waiting for you. And she says, Johnny. I said, what? She says, you you wouldn't bullshit me about that, would you? I said, no. I said, I bullshit about a lot of things, but that ain't one of them. But,
Yeah.
yeah, she was always She knew a bullshitter. But anyway, she died peacefully. And actually, they give you morphine, and they say, I was talking to they had a special thing. The morphine had a syringe, but it didn't have a needle. It just had like a squirter.
Yeah.
So I went to pick it up and it said keep it in the refrigerator till we tell you what to do. So it was in the refrigerator with this plunger. So we had the hospital bed here, and your mother's laying in the bed. So she says, um, "Is the patient's knees up in the air?" And I said, "Yeah." So she goes, "Take the morphine and put it under her tongue, and squirt some in." So I did, and she goes, "What's going on now?" And I said, "Nothing much. I don't see nothing." She goes, "Well, give her another dose of morphine." So I was all right. So I think the third time her knees went down. So she says, "Did the knees go down yet?" I goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, they did." She goes, "All right, that's enough. You don't have to give her no more." So it dawned on me like a couple minutes later that she was dead. And I sat there for a while. I couldn't believe it, but I found out that the morphine is what did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I don't
didn't
know if
know
you,
that.
so I remember, I mean, it was a pretty crazy time that week. I remember for whatever reason, um, she wanted me to be the one to like, remember, so it became like everybody was coming over to visit and it was
She
like
wanted
two
you to
taxes.
be the go-between between her
Yeah.
and her friends and who got
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, like how am I, I'm gonna have to say no, but I was like, you can't come in and see her, right? Like, cause it was just, she was either sleeping or every time she was awake, it was, she wanted me to make sure, I don't even know, like all this stuff. I just remember like, like she was more worried about other people than her. But I just remember like Kathy Walzak, she
That's
was,
not a surprise, right?
yeah. But she said that she's like, look, this is because Kathy was like knew about hospice, and she said, look, this is just what's going to happen. And it was just like, this window, this would happen, stop eating this, that, and all that. But not that that ends up making it any easier or better for you, but you just, yeah, you're right. The more
When your mother was giving stuff away, who got that diamond
yeah,
necklace? Do you remember?
necklace. No, I just remember how she wanted to make sure everything was written down with like a name of people. I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to worry about any of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was yeah, that sucked. But I just remember like how like she just wanted to make sure everybody else was all right.
Well, the
It's fun. I think that was the end of all of the McCarthy's being connected was mom was like the center of it all, like got everybody to
she
get to get
thought she was the glue to held that whole family together.
yeah.
Uncle
Yeah.
Mikey, Mike, I just talked to him last week. I talked to him a couple times in the last month or so, and so he after the father died in July, 4th of July weekend in 1970, the father died, and we spent 3 days at Conway. And I was standing next to Billy, the oldest brother, and he dropped dead the morning of the funeral. And the next 3 nights, I was at Conway's again for 3 more nights with him.
Yeah.
So they didn't have any insurance. I had to go to the GE Credit Union on the holiday and get a loan to pay for the funeral because he had no insurance. And so that sucked too. And so anyway, the funeral, and it's a terrible weekend. Like every time I go to the cemetery, I see the date,
Yeah.
1970. of Billy. The Bill. Jimmy's been gone since 2004.
Yeah.
You see that on the tombstone? I can't believe it. That it doesn't seem that far away, but it was what 2004. It's 25. Holy crap! It's just
Yeah.
Ruthie. I know two things about Ruthie. She died April 1st, 1990, and she was born on July 17th. I know her birthday and her death day. And
Yeah. I remember I was at school and at Framingham. And yeah, it was April 1st. Yeah. But she was at where she was at that
a
nursing
nursing
home.
home down the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Geez, your mother went there. She was ready to freaking call the police. She was raising her. She went in to see Ruthie, and she looked at the sheet, and it was blood on the bottom of the sheets. And her toenails have been cut so down low, they're all bleeding. The nurses there cut her toenails, and they cut it down to the quick, and her toenails were freaking bleeding. That was like, forget that. That was like,
Yeah.
imagine that, bastards. Anyway, so Uncle Mikey, when he turned 18, he was, because the old man's gone now, right? And the Mike's being a wise ass to the mother and everything. And so he turned 18. I got him a job in GE as a sweeper. So the week he had 6 months service, because if in GE, if he had 6 months service and left for the military, your time in the military counted as GE seniority. So the week after he had the 6 months in, I was sitting on the front porch. We live in next door. So I got a bottle of Granny Green Springs wine, apple wine. So I say, Mike, what are you doing? No, nothing. He comes over and says, yeah, have a couple of shots, have a little swig of wine. He's drinking the wine and wine. So I get him like half juiced, and I says, what are you doing? He says, well, what do you mean? I said, come on, take a ride. So I take him to Salem, and we go in the Marine Corps recruiter's office, right? So see, so he was half in the back. He didn't have any idea. So I says, uh, well, you're going to get drafted anyway. I said, you're going to be drafted for 2 years. I said, volunteer your draft, and then you won't have to worry about being drafted, and your service will count as GE service. So he goes, oh, yeah. He signed the shit, and then away he went for 2 years.
Yeah.
But he needed that. Uncle Mikey needed that. He needed to get his ass straightened out and away from the people he was running around with in Peabody. So
Yeah.
then I had the best car he ever had was a Ford Ultra Deluxe. It was golden color, had a black fabric roof, a four-door. It looked like it was copper tone, white wall tires. It was a beautiful car. The best. We're living on Stevens Street in Peabody. So Mike come home on leave, and he asked me if he could use my car. Oh yeah, sure. I'll give him the car. And he was with another guy from Peabody to come home on leave with him. So they got totally freaking drunk as shit. And up near Emerson Park, where you take a left to go, like up to the light to go down the hill on whatever. He kept going straight. He hit the curbstone. The tires stopped, and the car kept going. Total the whole freaking thing gone. Shit house right there.
Ugh.
That was the end of that car. Unbelievable. So anyway, it's
All right. Yeah, I'll let you go. I know it's late here. It's probably
okay.
past lunchtime. All
All right. Well, yeah, it's
right.
12.
Yeah.
Come
All
on.
right, Dad. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate
Well,
it.
thanks for having me, Joe. Appreciate it. Thank you. What do I got to do? Just X.